This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, welcome and adab. You are listening to Bharat FM, a one-of-its-kind, multilingual, eclectic provider of entertainment, information and news to Indian Americans. Headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, Bharat FM airs shows out of Cincinnati, Chicago and Phoenix. We take pleasure in our ability to cater to your bhakti, chusti, sfurti, shakti and masti needs with our audio and visual shows. Check out bharatfm.com for our online program schedule and archives. I'm sure the content will definitely tickle your senses. Tune in via the 24-hour web streaming on bharatfm.com or via the Bharat FM app. More information can be procured at 513-488-5070.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Things We Carry. I'm your host, Varshini Satish, and I'm so excited to have today Danji Totapalli, who is a senior global technology sourcing professional with a passion for cinema. Danji has spent the last 10 years at major Hollywood studios. He was previously at NBC Universal and currently at Sony Pictures. Danji volunteers as the chief curator at Indic Film Utsav, which is a global online film festival, and it occurred on November 12th to the 15th, 2020. And we're going to hear more about that very soon. I'm so excited to be back in the new year, and a huge thanks, as always, to Saaz for Cause and Bharat FM for making this possible. From my initial conversation with Danji, he has an incredible wealth of knowledge that is going to be really helpful for both new professionals as well as professionals who are a little ways into their career. And he has a ton of incredible advice if you're interested in making diversity, inclusion, and just highlighting South Asian voices a bigger part of your work, because that's something that he has done for all of his career. And he has some really practical and useful advice, I think, that we can all implement. So Danji, welcome. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Varshini. I really appreciate your having me on your show. So I'm really looking forward to chatting with you. Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year.
Yeah, and then it's also, interestingly, a major festival. This is coming right now. It's called Sankranti, Pongal. And it's also known as, I think in Punjab, it's called Lohri, and it's also called, it is another name that it goes by in certain other parts of India. Yeah. So it's a major festival. So I mean, happy Sankranti / Pongal, so / Lohri / any other name that it goes by.
Truly, and we have such a wide South Asian audience, so I think everybody probably has something that falls within a few days of this time as well, yes, on the calendar system. So yes, happy all of those things to all of us if you celebrate it. But I'm really excited to talk to you as well, as I said, and I think we can jump right into it. I would love to hear more about your story and just your background before we get into all the advice you're going to give, because I think your background, when you came here, all of that stuff, that context plays so beautifully into the advice that you have for us. So can you tell us, when did you first immigrate to the United States and your whole background story?
Yeah, I came to the US in 2000. Actually, 2000 is what I say all the time, but in fact, I got here a few weeks before the Millennium New Year. Mm-hmm. So even though my employer, I could have come as late as March of 2000, I decided to come in December of 99, just because I wanted to be in Times Square.
Yeah.
For the Y2K, Millennium New Year.
Yeah.
And so I got here, a few weeks before that, and I actually had the opportunity to spend time that night in Times Square.
That is incredible and iconic. And also, everyone at the time literally thought the world was going to end. How do you
Yes.
you felt about that?
I know. I mean, coming from India, you know how it is, right? I mean, you take everything with a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
So when I did, I mean, in fact, a little later, when I arrived in San Jose to start work, I had a colleague whose parents were doctors, and he was telling me that how his parents had converted their farmhouse, and then they had a gravity tank with gasoline in it.
Okay.
They had a whole storage area, which was as big as a small apartment,
Oh my God.
that was fully stocked with food. They had
Yeah.
firearms, and they were prepared for the world to end. And when he was telling me that, I said, "Really? You
Yeah.
know?"
Yeah.
And of course, the rest is. I mean, I mean, it's been about 20 years since Y2K, so we know that it isn't. It wasn't. It didn't go that way.
It didn't go that way.
Thankfully.
Some days I think now, though, in 2020, 2021, I'm like, maybe we should be preparing now. Like, it's gotten so much worse
Yeah,
in
yeah.
many ways. Better also, but sometimes I'm like, you know, maybe having a bunker isn't the worst idea, given everything that's going on right now.
Apparently, there is some businessman in Kansas who's selling old nuclear, launching these bunkers that they had all these rockets at them back up. See, he got hold of them, so he's selling them now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That innovation never stops, I guess.
Yes.
When you came to the US, though, was this like a common idea? Had like people in your family kind of already done it? Were you the first? Like, what was that like within your community and family back in India?
Yeah, it's very interesting. You know, I mean, I come from a part of India which is Telugu speaking, is the language people speak Telugu, and my theory is that my theory behind why there are so many Telugu people in the US is based on the fact that as early as mid-70s, there were a lot of Telugu doctors who came to the US.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I still remember in my childhood, one of my uncles who went to the US. I mean, he was a doctor, and he used to come back once every few years, and it was a big deal. You know, I mean, he would come back, and I mean, obviously, you know, he looked different in the sense that he was dressed so well, and he had all these gadgets. He had cameras, he had tape recorders, and you know, all kinds of interesting things. And he would bring pictures of his house and his neighborhood and friends, and there was snow, and so it all stayed in my mind as a child. And I'm sure there were many such young children or kids, young people who had similar experiences. So I think it was a latent desire for a lot of people who belong to that part of the country who want to go to the US because they remember all this. So I think that's my theory. But in my case, I actually was not really keen on coming to the US.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I was one of those guys who said, when my friends announced that they were going, I said, "You must be crazy. What's wrong with you? Why are you leaving India?" But eventually, I too had to move, but for entirely different reasons that we will not go into, which is very personal. But it wasn't really that I wanted to make a career here. And I mean, I used to run a software company when I was in India. It was doing very well, but there were a certain set of incidents that happened that made me decide to come to the US. So here I am.
Yeah, here you are. And
Yeah.
when you first landed here, did you already like have a community? Did you did you end up exactly where you wanted to be? Because if, for example, my dad, when he first moved here, he was like, I always knew I wanted to be in LA. He's like, I had no fascination for New York. This was always my first choice city. And he did spend some time, like in DC on the East Coast and a couple of other places because he had family there, some work, but he was always like, from those like pictures from the movies he had watched, because we're a big movie family too, and I know you're a big cinema buff.
Yeah.
He always knew like LA is the place for me, Southern California. Did you have like a dream locale, or were you kind of just open to wherever your career took you and things like that?
I really did not plan to be in California.
Mm-hmm.
I was willing to live in any part of the United States. And I'm not so much, I mean, a lot of people don't like snow, don't like cold, weather, but I actually enjoy it.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes I complain that LA is a little too hot for me. I would rather live in some place where there is a little bit of snow during the winter.
Yeah.
But of course, I mean, I love LA. I mean, I love, the fact that we don't have to really wear, I mean, a light jacket is all you need. Even in December in Los Angeles, so I love it. But to answer your question, I did not specifically plan to live in California. Since I came from a technology background, I happened to be here because this was, I mean, Silicon Valley was where I started working in San Jose. So that was the magnet for technology, and so that's how I got to California. And I haven't ever since I've lived here. It's been 20 years now.
That's amazing. And did you have like a community here or a set of people where you're like, okay, like when I get there, I know this person's going to be there to receive me, or just like that community safety net that I feel like a lot of people are like, I know there's going to be people on the other side when I get off that plane.
Yeah. I think, there are several types of immigrants, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are some immigrants who, most technology, folks from India are highly educated. They are postgraduate, at least. They're engineering graduates. They are from premium education institutions in India. And so they arrived in the US using a certain legal route.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just making that contrast because there are a lot of immigrants who come to the US from a very challenging environment that they have escaped from, and they're looking forward to a better life in the US. So I'm trying to differentiate that the most Indians who got here, came legally. They had family, they had friends already. And when they arrived in the airport in an international flight, there would be somebody to receive them, and they drove them home and they stayed there. It was comfortable, it was convenient, it was smooth in that sense, right? So same thing happened to me. I had family here, so I got picked up in the airport, and I spent a few months with my family, and then my wife and son joined me a little later. There's nothing exciting that happened.
Yeah.
Let me put it that way. It was pretty boring, straightforward, transition from India to the US.
Yeah. I think that's wonderful because I think so many immigrant stories are categorized by a lot of like strife and, like you said, challenges and a lot of heartache. So it's really, really unfortunate. And I know Sahas for Cause does a ton of work and community building with people who don't have that. So to just hear some of these stories where people are like, you know what, I was actually okay is really uplifting when you know that that's also possible and those cases are also there. So I'm very happy to hear that you had that community growing up here. And when you moved here, you said that you had like an uncle who would come back from the US and he was like different and he had all these gadgets. And I'm sure you were watching a ton of movies about this place before even moving here.
Yeah.
Did that image that you had built in your head, did it live up? Was there that like culture shock moment?
Well, so the images that I had about America were from comic books,
Yeah.
Archie comics.
Yes.
I mean, I also used to read poetry. So Robert Frost. I remember. I still remember a book that I had, it had Robert Frost's poetry, and it had little pictures in it, line drawings of farmhouses and with snow and beautiful looking vistas of the rural countryside. So the images that I had were more East Coast, rural kind of images. But I arrived in California, and California is very, very different.
Yes.
There's no snow here. It's not rural. I mean, if you live in Silicon Valley or Los Angeles, these are big cities.
Yeah.
So in that sense, and I have lived here ever since. So we travel quite a bit. So I do experience those kinds of the rural, images that I have in my head. But yeah, I mean, having lived in California, arrived in California and lived in California, definitely it wasn't like what I imagined it would be.
Yeah. And do you have like a funny anecdote or story that kind of like stands out to you from that like initial confusion? Because on the flip side, when my sister and I moved back to India, which we had visited growing up our whole lives, we moved back when I was in middle school, I was like, oh, whoa, living here is completely different from like when I would like occasionally visit for the summer and things like that. And so many things stood out to me. Like I didn't have a uniform on my first day in school. So I stood out like a sore thumb, not just because of the way I spoke, but also I was wearing like color dress, like on the first day of school. And I just remember being like, 7th grade is already, being 13 is already a really terrible time in most people's lives. And then I was like, oh no, this only made it worse. So, back to that first day embarrassment a lot.
Oh yeah, there were several incidents like that.
Yeah.
The one incident, a couple of them that I think I can recollect. One was so we were in Bay Area, right? And Bay Area in 2000. So my wife arrived after a few months, and then we were going someplace. And then, I think the very next day after she arrived, and we were at a signal, and she turns to me and says, "Hey, you said this is not like the United States that I imagined,
Yeah.
You look right, there's a car and there's an Indian family in there. Look left, there's a car, there's an Indian family in there. I mean, this is like back home." I said, "Yeah, I know you're disappointed, but well, this is Bay Area, and Bay Area has a lot of Indian population.
Yeah.
So be thankful, because I'm sure there's a bunch of our people who live in other parts of the country where they crave for Indian, family, friends.
It's true.
And they may not have that many. So let's make the best of it. And we love it. We love it that we don't miss India here so much. Yeah.
It is really, really nice. And I think transporting that like sense of community, even if we're like Indians from all over India, the fact that like someone else is Indian, it just already builds like a connection with them. And you're like, probably have some shared values of like how we treat friends and how we're there for them. So those like signature things I think will always stand out. And that's like a part of the reason why what we talk about on Things We Carry is like, there's so many positive aspects to being South Asian, but there's also a lot of things that we like carry with us, like these practices and beliefs that we're like, this is not what it means to be Indian or South Asian, or, it has to go beyond some of these things that are actually maybe holding us back or not actually helping us progress forward, especially because a lot of us moved to different places to do that very thing, is to like change things. Yeah. And in those early days, like when your wife and your son first arrived here and you were all just like settling your roots in, were there any of those like practices or rituals that you had learned from your family or community back home that you found yourself kind of like mentally returning to over and over again, just
You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. It's a great question, and I think a lot of us would have similar answers, and so one of the things that happened to me is that I have gotten a lot more closer to my roots
Mhm.
than I was when I was in India.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. In India, um, I mean, I wasn't this good at my mother tongue. I was okay, but I've gotten so much better with my mother tongue. I can write. I've recently written a fairly complex short story in my mother tongue.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And I wrote the story in Telugu in a dialect, in not just the regular mainstream Telugu, but
Yeah.
I picked a 11th century AD story
It's incredible.
in a part of the state that I come from, and I use the dialect of the people who from that region, and so I gotten better with my mother tongue. That's one. The second is in terms of my identity.
Mhm.
I think the contrast of who I am has become a lot more visible to myself,
Mhm.
and I think I make it. I work on displaying, or rather putting out that part of myself.
Mhm.
I feel good doing that. I feel good being an Indian,
Mhm.
and I try and bring out my Indianness whenever it's possible, without obviously becoming an overbearing person. But I don't hide it. I make it visible. I try to talk about my Indian experiences. So I think my identity contrast has really improved. I think living in India, we take it for granted that we are Indians, but coming here, having living in a foreign country, obviously, so that's another thing that's happened to me. So to answer your question, I think I have my identity has improved significantly
Yeah.
after living here in this country.
That's incredible. And also, writing a short story in such a specific dialect, that's literally incredible. I think it's one thing to have a conversation, but I feel like a story requires like adjectives and descriptions. And I think about Tamil and I'm like, okay, I don't know that many adjectives to like describe or like set a scene in someone's head. That's
Yeah.
incredibly difficult. That's amazing. And I think also how you're saying about just wearing kind of like your Indianness on your sleeve and like bringing it into all the facets of your life. Where I know, like growing up, I definitely felt like, okay, like this is something that I do at home and this is something that I do in public. But it's like, no, I'm not a different person just because I leave my house. Like I'm the same person. So obviously, just because I go into an office now, I don't like leave that part of myself at home. So I think that's amazing, and that's really amazing to hear. And speaking of like the professional space, you've had like an incredible career working at huge names in like Hollywood and this entertainment industry that's so central to LA. So when you first moved here, has the state of like diversity and like representation and the types of things that you do, has that changed? Did you feel like it's increased? Do you feel like you've always been a part of that type of work? Just how do you feel like it's gone over time?
Yeah, I mean, a good question again. So California is very, very diverse.
Yes.
Bay Area. I lived in Bay Area for a few years before I moved to Los Angeles. Bay Area had a lot of diversity. There were Indians. There were South Asians in general. There were East Europeans. I had friends from East Europe. I had friends from the Middle East. I had friends from Asia. I had friends from African countries. So it was very diverse. It wasn't. So there was a lot of diversity. Los Angeles is the place. There's so much diversity here. It's so obvious. You step out, there's diversity. So so the diversity was always there because the fact that California is like that. But over the period of time, I have noticed, especially after working in Hollywood, where diversity and inclusion is a big part of corporate life. These companies very, very consciously promote diversity and inclusion. There are departments, D&I departments that are in place that encourage creation of e-bridges. E-bridges are EBRGs, as we call them, or ERGs, employee resource groups. So there's an Asian group, there is a Latino group, there is an African American group, there is LGBT groups, there are vertical and horizontal groups. So I recently, last year, I was lucky enough to actually start a DESI group. It's called DESI, DESI, and it's a South Asian employee resource group. And these groups are very active. There's a lot of work that happens. There are talks on diversity. There are cultural programs. There's a lot of cultural exchange. There is empowerment that happens to these groups. You can feel comfortable being what you are, and the company encourages that. So diversity has really taken on a different meaning. And off late, after the George Floyd incident, I have, for the first time in 20 years, I have seen that companies have made official statements about it, that they have emphasized diversity, the importance of diversity, and they have condoned or so basically, I think diversity has come on to a notch higher in the past few months, and it's very, very obvious. It's a very good development because I think it was needed, and though the way it happened was not obviously, nobody would wish that, but it's happened, and I think there's a magnifying glass on diversity now. And within these groups, the conversations are also have moved up a little bit, right? So I mean, So I don't know whether I answered the question, but diversity was always there in California, and in Hollywood, obviously, is one of the most diverse places. Even though we had Hollywood So White, made before some time back, which is true.
Yeah,
it's a fact. But I think of late, diversity has become a lot more visible, and diversity and inclusion has become a lot more visible.
Yeah, you definitely answered the question. And when I think of Hollywood So White, I think of what Bong Joon-ho said when he accepted his Oscar, where I think it was something like, if you get over the barrier of one subtitles. Some people were like, I have to read the entire time when I watch this movie. He was saying, like, if you get over the barrier of those 1-inch subtitles on the screen, a whole new world of cinema is going to open up. And I think you really said it best. Like, it's become visible. It's become important. Like, it was always something that maybe we took for granted. We were like, all these people are in the room. All these people then have the same opportunities. But like you're saying, with these like groups that put emphasis on like, not just like, let's accept and tolerate people, but let's like push it forward. Let's like champion it. Let's have active conversations. That shift has definitely happened. And
the pushing the envelope, is happening, and it's happened continuously. But now I think it's really, there's a quantum jump in terms of the conversation level.
Absolutely. And you're doing so much of that work as well, both like in your career with the film festival. Can you please tell us about the film festival? How was it this year? How did everything go? And do you have any stories or films that really stand out from it?
Sure. I'm working in Hollywood for, it's not a coincidence. I love films.
Yeah.
I watch a film a day is my mantra. I watch a film every day, sometimes more than one. Okay. and on weekends at least 2 or 3 or 4. I love films. But again, I'm not so much a person who is behind the camera. I don't worry about that part of it. I'm more in front of the watching film. I love films. I love to watch films.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the guy who claps. I'm the guy who buys a ticket. So living in Hollywood, I'm working in Hollywood. Film is part of my life. It's a big part of my life. My paycheck comes from Hollywood. So years ago, I signed up to volunteer with an organization called the Indian Film Festival of Los Angeles, IFLA. It's quite a well-known film festival in North America. I would say it's the biggest, most prestigious film festival. Most ethnic festivals don't last that long. They start, it happens for 2-3 years, then they have financial problems, they're not able to raise the money, then they just go out of business. IFLA stayed in business, and it's growing, and it's 18 years since it started. Wow. Does very well, has a very committed team of staff and volunteers. The model is very, very solid. So I volunteered there for about 12 years, and I learned a lot from IFLA in terms of how to run a film festival. And then after that, I took a break for several years, and so there was an opportunity for me to helm lead a film festival completely as a top honcho. So I grabbed it. I said, yes, I'd love to do this. So Indic Film Utsav is a film festival that I have put together with a team of committed volunteers. And the very first Indic Film Utsav happened November 12th to 15th. And it was very successful.
Amazing.
Yeah. So we got about 850 films, submissions, and we picked 85 films out of the 850. They were across multiple categories. They are feature films, documentaries, shorts, ultra shorts, and across 18 different languages from all over India, including some foreign languages. Like there was a Polish film, there was a Tibetan film, there was a Nepali film. The important thing, though, was that all these 85 films had a positive message. And I'm saying that because a lot of film festivals, it's become fashionable nowadays for a film to be dark and gritty. But a lot of times I've heard from people like myself walking out of a theater tormented by the darkness of the film. And I've heard mothers saying, women saying, and a lot of people saying, why do I have to go through this? Why do I have to watch a film that is negative? And I feel tormented about it. So we decided that we will not do that, and we will program films that have a positive message. That's what we did. We also made sure that the films were family-oriented films because in the new world that we live in, where everything is online, our festival was also a global online film festival. So we were beaming into the living rooms of people. So when you do that, you cannot have, rated films.
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't know who's in the house, who's watching, right?
Yeah.
So we went for family-oriented films, which was another great decision. It worked very well for us. So we had these 85 films. We had about 20,000 people who signed up to watch the films. About 13,000 views. We had unique views.
Wow.
So it was a wonderful experience. I think we learned a lot. We did very well. And we're all set for next year. We're going to have a bigger festival next year. Yeah. So that was great.
Congratulations. That is incredible. Like you have 12 years of experience that you've like poured into something that's your own, and clearly like you've thought about it so intentionally, and you're like thinking about it top to bottom, like the smallest of details, like who is your audience, and the fact that like in quarantine it's mainly families, like people are going to sit down together and watch this, and it's, there's definitely like a place and a time for those heavier films and documentaries, but in this world we live in where everything already feels very heavy, I think that is incredible that you were able to touch so many people's like hearts and minds via like family oriented, uplifting content, which sometimes like if you want to create change, I feel like going from that angle instead of showing like a really intense film and scaring people straight, coming from that like message of positivity and family, I think that is almost an easier way to access people and really change them when they see like what things could be like. So huge congratulations. That is
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you. Can I take a quick 5-second break?
Yeah, of course.
I'm going to just...
We'll be right back. I wish I had a joke to tell right now, but I don't.
I'm back.
Okay. Yes.
So I was, So I also wanted to take the opportunity to mention a few names of films that won the awards at our festival.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a film called Gamak Ghar.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Maithili language film. Maithili is a dialect in Bihar.
Okay.
Beautiful film. It won the best feature film award at our festival. It was directed by a gentleman called Achal Mishra, and this is his first film. Wow. Amazing film. I mean, you guys get a chance, you should check it out. So another film called The Geshima is Born. It's the Geshima.
Okay.
So Geshima, Geshi, and Geshima. Geshi is a Tibetan monk.
Okay.
Geshima is a female Tibetan monk.
Okay.
And because of the patriarchal systems that we have in the world, Geshimas cannot certify to become certified monks. Only the male Geshis can become certified, but the Geshimas, even though they've had monkhood for so many parts, I mean, they couldn't. So the Dalai Lama. So this whole film is about how the Geshimas fought the system in a very peaceful, non-violent way, and convinced the Dalai Lama to actually pass a law to allow them to graduate.
Wow.
And get certified as monks. So it's a very powerful film about women's emancipation, which is a very cliched word. I don't like to use it, but it's a very good film. So it won the best documentary award at our festival.
Wow.
There are a couple of the films I just mentioned. One is a film called The Flowers and the Gemstones. It's a documentary short film. It's about the Travancore Maharaja in Kerala.
Okay.
And how for generations, a family of garland weavers in Tamil Nadu, in Kanyakumari, would send a garland to the palace every morning.
Wow.
And the whole thing and the story behind it, and it's such a well-made film. It's so immersive. The flowers, you watch them, you can smell it.
Yeah.
So fresh, and oh wow, it's a great film. And made by a guy called Sriram Raja. Excellent film. So there's so many of them that were wonderful films that I feel so lucky to have been able to watch all of them and be part of this organization that brought them and put them up there for anybody and everybody to watch.
Wow. Okay, I am adding all of them to my list, and I'm going to watch them. I'm going to try to watch all 85 films because I've been starving for some content like this. They seem so niche also. Like this is incredible to zoom in on such a large group of people on such a large, subcontinent and hear these like small stories. It makes it just everyone feels so much more human and so much more connected.
Yes.
The story about the Gishimas, I think like it is women's emancipation, but not in the way that we like think of it in the
Yes.
US or in any
Yeah.
other movement. Like this is such a niche, small topic that, something like this could easily not be highlighted, or this is a story you'd never hear. So I think it's incredible that you're bringing things like this to the forefront. And the flowers and gemstones. What was
Gemstones, yes, flowers and gemstones.
that one? My mom is going to love. She is from very close to Kanyakumari. Like has told me stories about her great grandfather and the Travancore Maharaja and things like that. So I think that is something that she would.
I'm sure she'll love it.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's amazing. And how did you like find a group of people where you're like, these are the people that we want to evaluate these films? Because that is a difficult job, and you have to really trust someone's like intentions and their background when like evaluating these films. Like, how did you build out this team of people to help you with this?
I mean, the team that I was able to put together, they are all friends of mine from my past film festival experiences. The people that I met during my IFLA days, with whom I maintained a relationship, a contact. So I asked them, "Hey, do you want to come on board?" And they were so magnanimous that they all agreed to come on board and volunteer. So it's a great team, a team of 6 people who are all well known to me. So in that sense, we all hit the ground running because each of us has expertise in certain areas of film festivals. So it became relatively easy for us to get going, even though, of course, we had a lot of challenges. And I mean, it was an experience, putting this together. But the fact that they all knew what they were doing helped us immensely.
That is amazing. And wow, I am so excited. I'm going to go through the entire catalog and just like start picking them off one by one, because I mean, if you're watching this stream, I think everyone should head to their website, and we'll leave it in the description of this episode when it's posted. You have a film list. Nobody can ever say they're bored during quarantine again, because like you have hand-picked and hand-vetted a list of incredible films for people that they get to just like enrich their lives with, which is amazing. I've been watching too much Grey's Anatomy. It's time to stop. There's like way too much Grey's Anatomy. So I'm gonna definitely dig into this.
The only thing I wanted to mention is the film festivals, they only last a certain number of days, and contractually we can't have the films online after that. So we have to scrub the website. So I mean, those 4 days was a period when the films were available. But and a lot of these films, unfortunately, they are so rare that they're not available. I mean, except during film festivals, some of them are available on Netflix and Prime and places like that. But most of them are not.
That is heartbreaking. Like the fact that these smaller, like you said, the best feature film was won by a first-time filmmaker. I mean, the fact that like these incredible films aren't getting the chance to get in the hands of the population is really
it's heartbreaking, actually. Yes. In fact, there are, of course, specialized OTT sites now. There's a site called Mubi, MUBI, Mubi.com, which is a specialized site that hosts films, independent films. So that's one place to look for. The other place is, can't recollect the name. There are a few specialized OTT sites where these films are available, but not all of them.
Yeah. And how do you think like these young filmmakers or just people like, I mean, even Ava DuVernay was saying, like, I didn't come into filmmaking till I was in my 40s.
Yeah.
Do you have any words of encouragement for these like smaller filmmakers who are like struggling to get their work out there, and how can they just like make sure that people get to see the amazing things that they're creating?
Very good question. Very good question. As part of my my work at Sony Pictures, as well as IFLA, IFLA days. So the staff and volunteers, there are so many young people in that group that have this passion they want to make a film, and it's not easy to make a film, right?
Yeah.
Because there are two parts. There is the capability of making a film. Passion is one thing, but capability is another thing. Like, for example, I want to make a film. Let's say I'm passionate about making it, but I will not have the skill or the capability to make it.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of young people are unable to separate these out. And they end up using several years in their life pursuing this, and it ending up not very successful. There's another reason for that. Besides not having capability, even the folks who have the skills, it's a pyramid, right? It's tough to get in. The film industry is one of the toughest industries to get in. Not everybody can be successful because there is only this much space, right? Not everybody. But of course, business models have changed. You can make a film and put it on YouTube.
True.
And nobody can stop you from doing that, right? So things have changed a lot. There are a lot more opportunities. So the advice that I have given to most young people that I've met, is that first of all, ask yourself, do you really have it in you to make a film? Assuming you pass that test and then, yes, I want to make a film. What do you do? How do you go about doing it? I mean, do you go to film school? Or you don't take that route and you just do the route of making a film and putting it on YouTube, right? So there are a lot of options, and none of these options are any less than each other. Like Anish Chaganty, Anish Chaganty is a young filmmaker from Los Angeles who made the film Searching. Have you heard of Searching?
Yes.
Searching was a film. So he made this film, and it was screening at Sundance. Sony Pictures talent scouts were there. They watched the film, they bought it, and it was a hit. It was a big hit. It did very well. So Anish Chaganty, he's now a well-known filmmaker. He's already got 2-3 other films in his bag. But that doesn't happen to everybody.
It doesn't.
So if I take the example of Anish Chaganty, I'm going down the wrong path, because Anish is one person. For every one Anish, there are 100 people whose names you will never know, who haven't succeeded. So it's important to be practical. It's important to be realistic about this industry. It's not an easy place to get in.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I think that's more than like good advice. I think it's honest advice from the fact that you've seen this, because like Anish, this is like a 1 in a million situation. And there are more outlets opening up. There are like ways where this, YouTube films like have seen so much success. You can get millions of views. You can get the exposure you need, all from the comfort of your home with like a limited bank account. And I think the thing that I thought about when you said like you might have the idea, but do you have the capability, is like you might be able to conversationally speak a language, but can you write a short story in that language? It's like 2 separate things. And I'm really still blown away by the fact that you wrote an entire short story. I think that's incredible. So I think that's the example I came back to, is like all these stories like should inspire you, but I think it's really important to find like the medium in which you want to put your content out there. Like I really love speaking to people. I love doing these interviews. So I think just keep exploring to find that medium. And I work with creators and creatives like on a daily basis in what I do at work. And they're always like, how do I get the millions of views? Like, how do I become famous? And a lot of it is like, be yourself, find what works for you and be consistent, but know that like virality is like a fleeting thing. Like you need that consistency, you need that authenticity, you need to like keep working at it because, one day you might have a video that flops, one day you might have like something that doesn't take off. What are you going to do? Are you just going to give up? Yeah. Then were you in it for the art or were you in it for like the success? Like you need to have those like mental conversations with yourself a lot too, which is,
And I mean, I would say that Varshini, having interacted with you, I think you're on a path that will lead you to one of those successful spots. You're doing pretty good.
Okay, thank you so much. Because some days I have doubts. Sometimes I'll be looking in the mirror like, are we going to be okay? Like have a conversation with myself. But I thank you. That means a lot considering someone who has worked with a lot of talent and incredible people. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. It's very nice to hear. And
I meet a lot of young people, and that's why I wanted to say this because I think you seem to have it in you, and I'm really hoping that sometime down the line I'll hear your name as someone who's accomplished something. So
thank you.
All the best. All the best.
I'm very grateful. I'm very, very grateful for that. I truly appreciate it. I would like to ask you, because I'm getting a little shy, I would like to ask you one frivolous question.
Sure, go ahead. Nothing frivolous. Everything is profound.
Okay, I don't know if this is going to be profound. What are your thoughts on reality TV? Have you consumed a reality TV show? Because my dad, like I said, huge film buff, loves it, will not touch a reality TV show. My mom and I will be watching it in the room and he's like, I'm leaving, like I have to go. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, there are two shows that our family is hooked onto.
Okay.
Ever since we got here. And we've been watching these two shows for 20 years now.
Okay.
Without missing them.
I'm ready.
And they are Jeopardy.
Okay.
And Wheel of Fortune.
Oh my God.
Yeah. We hooked on them. We watch them every day.
I was hoping you'd say like the Kardashians or something, but this is better. Like this is
So reality shows there's all kinds of reality shows.
All kinds. So this is definitely the better side of reality TV.
Yeah, this is pretty good. I love them because you learn something. Jeopardy, you learn so much from Jeopardy. Wheel of Fortune is a great show. It's a simple show.
It is.
It's not as if you got to be, it's not like the Survivor shows where you got to fight with each other and, be so mean and sometimes and all that. You don't have to do any of that. You just have to answer questions and you end up winning some money, prizes and things like that. So those two are one example of reality shows that I like, the kind of reality shows that I like. But I like The Amazing Race.
So good.
I love all these. There are some reality shows that I like, but there's a whole lot of them that I don't even know what they are. I don't even watch them. The Kardashians, I haven't watched it even once.
Maybe don't. Like, I don't think you're missing out too much on everything.
Yeah, not my cup of tea, basically, I don't have the patience for that.
Yeah.
And you also have to be part of the subculture, right?
It's true.
If you're not part of the subculture, then it's all Greek and Latin, right? What's going on, right? I mean, okay, who's who? And so, yeah.
I totally agree. Reality TV shows have their own fan bases, their own subculture, and they tap into like a very specific part of your like brain and personality where you're like, okay, like I kind of understand like where you are in your downtime. So that's really funny. I just had to ask that considering we had so many profound things. I had to like balance that.
Balance it out.
But,
well, if you ask some people, I just read this morning that There's a conservative columnist who wrote that the recent, incidents that we've seen, he said Kim Kardashian, Oprah Winfrey, and a couple other names, and he said that these people should come out and appeal to the crowd, to the public, to stop do all this nonsense. And he was saying that they'll probably listen to them more than Nancy Pelosi and anybody else for that matter.
It's so true. The draw that some people have, the power that they have over these crowds, like, it's so true. And there's all these conversations about, like, should these personalities, like, speak out about politics, speak out about this? I think they should. And I think my dad and I talk about this a lot, who is surprisingly excellent about this is Cardi B. You would not expect it, but she did a live stream with Bernie Sanders. And it was so informative, reached so many people, and I think people really learned something. So I think like even some of these people were like, we may not necessarily think that they're like political paragons or like anyone you should take political commentary from. They do have a platform and they do have a responsibility. And you have a platform and you have done so much with that platform with your film festival, and you've given a voice to like so many people. And it's just the coolest thing. And I'm going to find a way to watch at least the 3 films you mentioned. I'm going to figure it out.
Let me also look, and I'm sure, and I'll be able to find where they are posted. I'll share some information so that you actually get to.
Yeah, and we'll include it in the post so people can at least give some of these like directors or someone a follow on social media or something to just keep up with their work and their next project. So that would be really, really great. But I mean, thank you so much for taking the time to speak today. I had so much fun talking to you. I'm really, really glad that we could do this. And also thank you for your kind words. But it was really great to hear your like honest advice, give an insight into this industry, and just like hear more about your career and everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you for actually talking to me. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to leave with just a little bit of advice to all the young people. Identity is everything. You have to preserve your identity. And identity comes from who you are, who your parents are, what your language you speak, what are the roots where you come from. And they may not look important, but if you let them go, then you don't have roots.
It's true.
Because you can't grow roots overnight. Right? The roots are roots. And it's not that I can grow a new set of roots like tomorrow, right? So it's important to recognize those roots and stay honest to those roots, and be yourself, and preserve your identity is a very, very important thing. And I wanted to just mention that to whoever is listening.
Thank you. I think that is a beautiful and excellent note to leave on. And you are so right. I think it is incredibly important. And yes, thank you so much again. And before we close out, a huge thank you again to Bharat FM and Sahas for Cause. And as always, we talked about Danji's story today and how he had a fairly seamless transition coming to this country. But of course, if you are someone in need of help or in need of community or assistance, please feel free to reach out to Sahas for Cause at info@sahasforcause.org. They're doing a ton of incredible work right now, and they can connect you to someone and the resources you need. And again, thank you so much to Bharat FM for having us and for making it possible to have incredible conversations with people like Danji. So thank you so much again. Bye.
Thank you, Varshini. Bye.
Next
Bye-bye.
Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, welcome and adab. You are listening to Bharat FM, a one-of-its-kind, multilingual, eclectic provider of entertainment, information and news to Indian Americans. Headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, Bharat FM airs shows out of Cincinnati, Chicago and Phoenix. We take pleasure in our ability to cater to your bhakti, chusti, sfurti, shakti, and masti needs with our audio and visual shows. Check out bharatfm.com for our online program schedule and archives. I'm sure the content will definitely tickle your senses. Tune in via the 24-hour web streaming on bharatfm.com or via the Bharat FM app. More information can be procured at 513-488-5070.
This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.